Welcome to Book Huddle. I'm your host, Karen Reader with Readgab, and I'm just thrilled about this book that I discovered over the summer. Polly and I connected, and so I had this chance to read Skyriders, and I've been listening to it and just loving it. And when Libby needed it back and there was a wait list, I was like, no, I cannot wait. And I just had fallen so in love with the audio, so I had to buy it. Polly, thank you for joining us today. Can you just take a second to introduce yourself? Kind of tell us a little bit about who you are in addition to being an author, maybe a little bit about your background.
Well, I'm very happy to be here. Good morning. Good morning. My name is Polly Holyoke. I live in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. I grew up in Colorado. So I think one of the first things I'd say about me is I really love the outdoors and hiking and camping. And so when I can, you'll find mountain themes in my books because I just love putting that in as a setting. I was a school teacher. I got certified to teach here at Boulder, here in Colorado, and I taught seventh grade social studies for about a decade. And then my husband started moving us around the country. And it's hard to get certified if you're only going to be in a state, for 3 years,
Yes.
2 years or whatever.
Yes.
So I thought, you know what? I got to do something else. Maybe I'll write a book. How hard could that be?
How
Let me
hard
just
could
do
it be?
so, always I
Not so
had an
hard to
idea of
write, just to
career.
get published, right?
And so perhaps I wrote romance novels under a pen name, which I'm not going to share here.
Okay.
I had sold several of those in New York, and then I realized that they weren't staying in print very long.
Okay.
And I had some things I really wanted to say to kids. And I thought, I don't know, I just get my own name for that. And so eventually I got an agent to represent my children's fiction. How hard could that be? And then I started selling children's books. So I write fantasy and science fiction for Disney Hyperion and for Viking children's books.
Oh, I love it. And I was explaining it when I picked up carpool. I had a seventh grader in the car and I had the audiobook on and that I had forgotten to turn off. And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry." And he said, "Oh, what are you listening to?" And so I'm explaining it, and it's so hard to do it justice, like explaining it, because I'm like, well, it's about these flying horses, but they're not really Pegasus. And so, Polly, take a second. And
Yes.
since you're probably so much better at explaining it, give us the elevator pitch for Skyriders, please.
Okay, well, it might be a little longer because it is complicated with all the
That's all right. A
words.
little
But
over
anyway,
a very Empire State Building empire
oh, I like
elevator
that
pitch.
analogy. Thank you very much. So, Skyriders is really a story of a brave young courier on her flying horse delivering the mail across a vast empire. And Kai loves her job and she loves her sky steed, Nara, with whom she can communicate telepathically. And she loves her grumpy Uncle Doug's, even though he's always pestering her to practice sky fighting. She thinks that's a waste of time because everybody knows the chimerae, which are these terrible three-headed monsters that once ravaged Burkalt. Everybody knows they're long gone. Well, of course, they're not really long gone. And Uncle Doug's is terribly wounded trying to fight the first wave of chimerae that invade. And then it's up to Kai to take his manual on sky fighting tactics to the capital and convince people there to listen to her. And that's really kind of the quest in the first book. How do you get a shy girl from the fringes of the empire, from a disadvantaged population, to get people in power to listen to her because they've forgotten, the whole empire's really forgotten how to fight chimerae effectively. And so little sky steeds, and these tactics are super important. And that's really her job in the first book, to get people to listen to her. And then maybe the subtext is that her horse is always her sky steed is always reminding her that she needs a herd of her own. And the
Yes.
question is whether a shy kid can develop friendships. It was just a ton of fun to write. It's based on the Pegasus myth and the American Pony Express. I just love the
What a
Pegasus
fun
myth. I
combination.
know. I'd say anybody in your practice interested in writing. I know there's some teachers and librarians. You have summer vacations free. You should think about writing books. I was
Yes.
a teacher and I had those summers free and I didn't want to teach summer school. So I decided to write a book. Um, but
Lovely.
when you take two totally different ideas and you mash them together, sometimes something beautiful and creative comes out of it. So
Yeah.
I've always loved the American Pony Express. I've always loved the Pegasus Mail. And then I got to thinking, what if you had, a Pony Express with flying horses? Could that
Yeah.
work? And that's sort of the genesis of Skyriders.
Oh, and I just love it. And it's so well written. It's so much fun. These characters, they're so compelling. And as I was reading it, I knew for sure that I wanted this to be a theme that us talk about friendships, because this is something that it's very real for kids. these older kids. And, as they're transitioning, especially to middle school, this is a hard thing to do friendships. But we don't want to hand them a book and be like, here's a book about friendship. You're good. And so, right. But we do want to hand them a fantasy book because this is so popular, such a captivating, fun, exciting battle. But then we have Sky, and she talks to her Sky Steed about, just being uncomfortable approaching another individual because she was teased as a child. And now she's in a position as a career, this is a good job, but it holds some credibility, right? That people should give her some respect. She's got a Sky Steed, but even still, she feels nervous to interact and talk with others. And so her Sky Steed is always encouraging her, through her mind to talk to him. So let's talk about that. How you worked in about developing friendships in this book. Was that a goal? Did this happen by accident?
Well, I did teach seventh grade, which is in middle school can just be a brutal time for kids. And some sail right through, and some really hit a tough time. Often what happens is maybe your best friend in fifth grade and sixth grade suddenly becomes cool and you're not. And that's the great mystery, of course, what makes a kid cool and what
Yes.
makes a kid, maybe not so cool. So I certainly, that was a theme in the back of my mind. I also just think that children love animal books and they love books about friendship. I was
Yes.
thinking before this podcast of, sort of some classics. And you go back to something like Charlotte's Web. It's about animals, but guess what? It's about friendship between a lonely pig and a spider. And friendship just gets us. Go back and read Charlotte's Web sometime. It really
Oh,
is just such
I
a
read it
wonderful.
probably 2 years ago out loud to my children, and I was just like,
Oh, I still cry. I still think about spiders totally differently.
yes.
Like I'm always moving spiders outside, unless I think it's one that's poisonous. It all goes
Right,
back to
right.
Charlotte and Wilbur. But Bridge to Terabithia, another classic that really is about kind of a lonely kid with a tough family life, a boy, and then this very creative girl moves into his neighborhood from the city, and the two of them forge a very, unlikely friendship that
Right,
means so much to both of them.
right.
Um, and then I go back, I think about Harry Potter occasionally. I really think it's about friendship as much as it is
Yes.
about defeat,
Isn't that so much the core? Like we get lost in the magic, but this is so much the core of it all. Yes.
between those three main characters. So I think friendship's super important for kids to read about and how it can look. It can look in lots of different ways. One big mistake, all you parents out there, is to think that your kid has got to have a bunch of friends to
Right.
be happy and satisfied. I know that my younger daughter had one really good friend in junior high, and that same good friend on into high school. And eventually her confidence grew. She did have learning differences. So I think that made a transitioning to a mainstream school hard for her.
Right.
Having that one friend really saved the day. And the two of them had so much fun together. And
Nice.
I wasn't worried that she didn't have scads of friends starting out.
Right.
By the end of high school, having the one good friend gave her the confidence to reach out and make friendships elsewhere,
Right.
which was really, really lovely. And she's gone off to become a social worker and has great empathetic skills, and everybody talks to her because she's
Wonderful.
such a good listener. But yeah, I think
But
friendships.
that's so good to point out, not to be worried, If your child has the ability to have one friend, then that is a wonderful thing.
And so in Skyriders, it really ends up being that her Sky Steed Nira, she can communicate with him through mind speech because it's fantasy. I would call it telepathy, but that's really more of a science fiction term.
Yes.
And he really understands her and he accepts her. In some ways, he's kind of a counterbalance to her because she is
Yes.
so shy and kind of inward, and then he's so outgoing. And sometimes some of my Sky Steed partnerships, sometimes they're very similar, and sometimes they're very different, and they balance each other out. But I think that's a reason why so many of the animal books have been popular, where boy has dog,
Yes.
Shiloh, still one of my favorite
Oh,
stories. That
right.
that dog means so much to him. You can go back to the Yearling, which is a really old book, a deer and a boy, or more recently there's Pax, a boy and a fox.
Yes.
Kids need to know that there's somebody who knows them inside out and loves them with all their flaws and accepts them.
And
And
that
so
doesn't need to be a human.
and it doesn't always need to be a human.
Right. That's beautiful. Yeah, I know that's true for my son. Like we lost our dog and it was awful and so hard to go through. And we he wasn't ready and he wasn't ready for a new one. And so finally we kind of said, well, I think we're going to get one, but it's okay if you're not ready to connect with her, because we were like, we can see that you need one. And it did take, a couple months for him to be ready to connect with her, but now that bond is just incredible. And
Oh, that's lovely.
with him. And yeah, those animal connections are so powerful, so powerful. And I love how in Skyriders, because it develops these skills where she is almost, it's thrust upon her to, go deliver this manual about these techniques. And she's one that nobody's giving any credibility to. So she keeps ending up in these developing relationship situations that she is not interested in. She has no desire to take the lead and be like, hey, everybody, listen to and follow me. She doesn't have that confidence. She's just a shy girl. But to see that confidence develop and to see those friendships develop is such a powerful thing woven into this story that I just loved it. That's such an importantful thing. It is importantful. It's such an important thing for people to understand and believe that they can make a difference, even being shy. So tell us about Kai in that aspect of her taking and using that agency.
So I think it's also really love reading stories where shy kids make a difference. I was a shy kid, maybe not quite as shy as Kai, but it was hard for me sometimes, certainly going to a new school or being in a new situation. And so scraping up that courage to sit with somebody at the lunch table. The lunchrooms are really tough places for
Oh
kids
my
moving
God.
from school to school.
So much noise coming in.
But also, are people going to reject you when you sit down at that table? It's going to be okay for you to connect and, or talking to somebody and so those outgoing kids are just such a godsend for these shy kids. And by the way, books are really godsends for
Aren't they?
the kids. That's, a whole
Where
other
the,
place that they can go. And you
where they can
librarians,
find those connections, just like with the animal connection, you can make a connection with a book. Yeah, that's a
and
beautiful
you feel
part.
warm and safe. I can't tell you how many wonderful librarians because I'm a school teacher, I've gone to over 400, I think it's moving up to 500 schools now across the
Oh, that's
country.
incredible.
And I love passionate librarians. And those passionate librarians out there, a lot of times they make their library a safe place for kids.
Yes.
And it starts with, I love a cluttered library, and I love a library with comfortable chairs and a library where kids can just come and go. Maybe it's kind of a loud library.
Yeah.
And that's great too, because it means the kids are really happy being there and are comfortable being there. And I just think librarians save a lot of these shy kids who need time and need a book to protect them from all that stuff that's coming at them that they don't feel comfortable with. And over time, when they have a safe place, and maybe the librarian's their best friend for a while, but
Yeah.
that would give them the confidence to then reach out to that one person that might make a difference. And so for Kai, I guess,
Yes.
she starts with one groom that's a good friend, and then she meets another groom that becomes a friend, and she starts to trust them. And that's kind of the problem, is that kids have been so mean to her because she has dyslexia, that she couldn't read quickly or well at her first school. And so she's had a bad experience with those personal relationships, but sort of one friend at a time, she starts to build that confidence. And by the end, she's really confessed the fact that she has problems reading to this sort of her new herd.
Yes. Heard.
So
Yes.
Rob would call her new herd of friends. And that is really a great comfort to her. And I'm very proud of her. I didn't know that she could do that, but by the end of the book, she does. And I'd say another thing was just that leading by consensus. I do like stories where the shy kid maybe stays on the fringes for a while, but that shy kid also has a lot going on upstairs, as most shy kids do. And
Yes.
eventually she really realizes that she has a lot to offer.
Yeah.
And if she doesn't do it, nobody else will. But she's not the kind of leader that says, okay, we're going to do it this way, and that's my way. And the prince in the story is a little bit more like that. He really doesn't listen to other
Isn't he?
people very well. And
Yes.
so the two of them make an interesting partnership. And by the end of it, she's more assertive. And by the end of the story, he's learned to listen to other people a little bit.
Yes. Oh, and I love that. And isn't that one of the great things that books give us, is that we learn by example, right? Through seeing other people. So it's giving us these examples of her developing confidence, of, the prince learning to, tone up down, or just like these constant examples that we have, because when I'm teaching my kids, it's hard. I'm not at the school to show them examples, but I can be in these stories with them. And, I don't do it constantly because that's lame. Your kids are like, Mom. But, where it comes up naturally, I can be like, oh yeah, and that's like this character in this book. And didn't they just do that? And sometimes they'll notice. And even if they don't notice, they read it and they felt it, right? Because we feel so much when we read a book for sure. And I feel like it was there. Definitely, Polly. I just loved it. I felt so many feels reading this book. Just loved it. And so,
I do think books just a little corollary to that. And by the way, I just love your podcast and I love your message. All the ways that books can help kids. I think it also reading makes kids more empathetic because they do
yes,
feel what's going on. And kids who read are more empathetic because they've lived whole lives. They've lived whole experiences. They've walked in the shoes of, yes, imaginary characters,
but
but those of
still,
us who take our job seriously, we're making characters as realistic as we can,
yes.
even if it's in a world full of chimera and sky steeds. And kids learn from that as well. I think that they really become um, not better human beings, but human beings that are more aware of other people's feelings,
Yeah.
what
And
other
I'm
people's
more,
lives might be like.
yes, more skilled and fully developed because we've got to do that as we grow, to be successful.
And our society really needs more empathetic kids
Develop. Yes.
right now, as much
Yes.
than ever.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, yes. So, and one thing I was thinking about Kai is that she changes and grows, but she maintains a certain aspect of herself. Those things that she loves, she still loves. And so then it's also about finding that balance, right? And it goes into that in the second book of, what do I love about these new things about me? And what do I still love that I'm not letting go of? I'm still me. I'm still that girl, and that's okay. And I'm going to keep certain parts of that too.
And I'm not going to become a cool girl at the Capitol. I really
Right.
like my orchard. She really
Yes.
wants to go back home to her quiet farm. And, I think she'll always be somebody who likes life that's a little bit more quiet. She's never going to be, an extrovert as opposed to an introvert. And she's okay with that.
And
Going
I
back to the
love
theme,
that message. I love that there because it's like we want children to be confident in their own skin, but we want them to be happy being, you don't need to lose you to be confident.
and you don't have to be the noisiest kid in the room to
Yeah.
lead. I used to be a Girl Scout leader, and it was interesting just to see who really, Girl Scouts is a lot about developing leadership of girls. And it was fascinating to see, as I get a new troop, who some of those quiet kids really, dove in and really, really made a difference. And speaking of making a difference, there's an environmental aspect to all this. I love when kids think that they can change things. I'm one of those idealists that think I can change things.
Yes.
I
Absolutely.
still this way. And sometimes I do change things, and sometimes, I come a cropper, but it's always a good idea to try. And here, well, okay, so I had another series with Disney called The Neptune Project, really talking about Skyriders today. But this is
Yes.
about a shy girl who leads a group of kids in the ocean.
Okay.
And I get all kinds of emails about that, but kids that have become marine biologists and kids who care a lot about the ocean. And
Yes.
some of them have become marine biologists. And I just love the idea that they could be out there and now they care about the ocean. They organize ocean
Yes.
cleaning days. So there's a whole generation of climate activists like Greta Thunberg. She sat at the Swedish parliament for a year before anybody started paying attention to her. Um, and now we've got climate activist kids, youth movements around the world, kids who have agency, kids who
Yes.
believe that they can make a difference. And right here in Colorado, my favorite story right now is that there are a group of kids down in kind of a not as affluent a district
Uh-huh.
who are all about getting the schools to change from furnaces to heat pumps,
Nice.
which economically will be way better for the schools and really reduce their carbon footprint. But these
Nice.
12, 13, and 14-year-old kids have been going to school board meetings and saying, we need to do this.
I love
And
it.
bless their hearts, they're doing it. This school district has now changed out. 20 of the schools are going to go over to heat pumps. And the kids are still trying to get them to do the last 10. But it's just
Well,
great to think that maybe the kids learned about making a difference reading a book, and then they go out and practice that in their own life.
yes. Yes. And I love that it takes persistence, right? Because Kai takes this manual and it's the way to stop these awful chimera. And she's gonna go and her Uncle Doug is just, you're gonna go save the day, Kai. you've got this. But she gets there and it is through a lot of persistence. She really, like you were saying, she makes friends with the grooms first, and she is taking care of other sky steeds. And it's not this immediate her walking in and being like, I have the plans and I can save us all. Like, I mean, she does try to give it to people of import, but they don't listen to her. And so it's just, I like also that theme of persistence that we have to do, because you were talking about those. I'm sure that initially when they tried to tell somebody about changing these pumps, that they weren't immediately met with, oh yeah, we're just going to do that, right? I doubt it was an immediate thing. And so it
Yeah.
probably took them a lot of courage and dedication to keep with it. And what a wonderful
Mm.
theme and a lesson for kids, that's life. You've got to keep with something that's important.
But you can make a difference. And I think the really tough thing about fourth, fifth, and sixth grade is that people are telling you what to do all day long.
Right.
When I was a school teacher, they had me actually shadow a kid, and it was a fascinating experience. They gave me a sub for a day, and they wanted all the teachers to follow a kid throughout their day. And it was such an eye-opening experience. I wish parents could do that with their kids. And they
Oh,
would
I
tell you
wish so badly.
from the start of the day, from get out of bed, get ready for breakfast, get your backpack, get your stuff together. Then you go to school and you go from class to class where teachers want you to get in there quickly because they want to
Yes.
start their lesson. And you got to get your iPad out, you got to get your pencil out, and then you got to shift
And then
from
those
this
poor
class.
neurodiverse individuals.
So I couldn't, I mean, I was so tired by lunchtime trying to pay attention to science, history, and English that by the time we got to math after lunch, I mean, that was just not happening for me, and to think of the kids and people telling them what to do all day
Right.
long. And so it's really wonderful to think that they could, I don't know, we need to give them more space where they can make decisions and they can start, again, having agencies, because
Yeah.
at
That's
school right
autonomous
now,
life.
it's just a
Yeah.
series of you do, please, do that, do this, do that, and
Now I'm
then
telling you where to go and when to go. And yeah. Yeah.
they
We
don't have
try
a lot of power.
definitely.
So if they can read a book where the kid has power, at
Yes.
least they can start to see what that might look like.
Yes. And trying not to, when possible, I try not to say no. I need to remember that, to let children be able to make some decisions. So, kind of what you're just saying got me thinking about, how do we help kids? And this is my goal in life, is help kids coming to love reading, get more kids to love reading. So, you've been the school teacher, you've been doing these school visits, and you're the author. What jumps out to you as what will make the difference in helping these reluctant readers?
Okay, well, let's take two different paths. One is to talk about what the school can do, because the really
Right?
lovely thing about anecdotally, I can tell you schools that do some really wonderful things to get kids
Yes.
going. I
Yes.
love reading camps. There
Hmm.
will be schools that will take the whole day off for all the grades, and the kids come in their pajamas and they set up tents or things like that. And then the
Oh,
kids, have mattresses and tents and slumber parties, and they read. And they read some in the morning, and then they talk about the books, and then they read again. But it's fun. Um,
I love that. I have not heard of reading camps. Okay. Like, when I was a
Reading
kid, we did
slumber
a
parties.
readathon and we got to bring our pillows and snacks and blankets and do a readathon. And so I do that every other month with my kids. And either we get some new library books or I gift them each a new book. And as a family, we readathon and we'll take breaks to eat and talk. And there's 20 to 30 minutes that all ages, my youngest is 4 and my oldest is 15 and 2 in the middle. And they sit there and read. It's
And
like,
that is wonderful. So you were modeling it. Okay, it's easy to say, do what I say, but it's a whole lot better, as we were talking earlier, when they actually see somebody modeling the behavior.
yes,
So when you're sitting down and reading and your husband is sitting down and reading,
all the
oh my
time.
gosh, that's such a powerful message. But schools can make it more fun. Another thing that they do, I think Florida has one of the best programs for this. State reading lists are basically incentive lists, right? The idea is to get kids reading. And
Yeah.
some states and librarians are more invested in their lists than others. But
Yes.
one of the best in the country, I think, is in Florida. And what they do there is they actually, if a kid has read a book on the state list, the Sunshine State and Readers List, they
Yes.
give the kids little dog tags that they can wear on a necklace. And the teachers are wearing those dog tags and wearing those necklaces.
I love it when
And,
they model. Yes, and get apart. Yes, the whole school.
and
Oh,
then what happens there is then, they can talk. They can say, "Oh, Miss Jameson, you read Hoot. Did you love it? Or you read Skyriders or whatever." And then they can start comparing notes. And so it makes it cool. Making it cool to read makes it fun to read.
Yes,
If you make
absolutely.
it, I don't know how you get away from making it sound like work. There was
Oh
just
my gosh, yes. And there's this one school that they just have Reading University and they have limited books on it. And I'm like, you are only appealing to the kids who already love to read. And so it's frustrating for me. But I do, going off of that, have you heard of Middle Grade March?
no,
So I interviewed the gals who do it, and so they're just, there's BookTube, and there's a lot of adults who love to chat on YouTube about books. And so these three gals who were just like, do you know what though? Middle grade books are still good for adults to read. And so they introduced it through Catherine Rendell's Why Read Middle Grade Even Though You're So Wise Now or something. It's a beautiful little book. And so, anyways, every March they do a month and they have 5 prompts. And then it's all about getting adults to read middle grade books. And when I interviewed them, we talked about one of the things is some of the parents and teachers and things that are a part of this just because it's their own hobby thing. Then they're able to bring kids in and be like, hey, I'm doing this thing and I'm reading middle grade books. Have you read this book? And so I love when adults get involved. Oh, it makes such a big difference.
oh, that's fabulous. So that's kind of on the school side. Just again, make it sound like fun as
Yes.
opposed to work.
Yes.
And there are some very clever teachers out there doing beautiful, beautiful things doing that. Also having an open library. It breaks my heart to see how often schools in California and Colorado and some other places are going to paraprofessionals who can only have the library open 2 days a week. So then the kids have to come in such a hurry, and they're not coming in and out all the time. Here in Steamboat,
Yes.
3 wonderful elementary schools where the kids just get to come in almost every day, and they come in with
Yes.
loads of books and they go out with loads of books.
And librarians are doing little book talks or first chapter reads, or, at these schools where they have time to give a PowerPoint presentation and talk about some of the books going on or introduce them. There's
Or
power in
kids
having
giving
a
those,
librarian taking time with the children.
and then also to have kids doing those book talks and kids talking
Yes.
about the books that they've again, whenever you can give the kids agency and let them be a part of the process, then they're really proud of the book they've read, even if it's a little bit smaller one or a little bit shorter one. So that's what I think schools can do. I think on the author side of it, I just read an interesting article in PW about how do we make reading more fun.
Yes.
And on the author side, they were really saying that maybe you have to make the books a bit more exciting than they used to be. And so, Charlotte's Web is not a page turner necessarily at the start. So I don't want to denigrate quiet books, but because of the competition, there is for kids' attention right now. It's crazy. That when they go home from school, they can turn on the phone if they have one of those, or they borrow their parents' phone,
Yep.
or they can turn on their iPad, or they can turn on the computer and go into video games, which can be very imaginative, but I'm not sure they always generate creativity on the kids' part. Well, depends on the kind of a video game. But you're competing against so many things like that. A book is just quieter. So this article is arguing that some of the books that are selling a little better now are ones that are more exciting,
Yes.
because you do need to start with a hook and you need to take off. And that just the reality of 2024 versus writing the book 50 years ago, there were not nearly as many competition for kids' time. So I think there's something said the authors need to think about speeding up of the books a little bit. It certainly is great for fantasy and science fiction because, of course, life,
Fun.
everything's at stake. You've got to
Yes.
save the empire. You have to
But at
save
the
the
same
world.
time, you've got a world build. You've got to introduce characters and stuff, and you've got to make sure it's not boring. And so that's a tricky thing as the author, that even with the exciting books, you've still got a degree of stuff to introduce and develop. And so what a tricky thing to balance. So that's something you did well, Polly, and
Oh,
that
well,
I
thank you very
think
much.
was
I,
wonderful.
I have a whole lot of fun with this. Let's see, I'll grab them real quick just because this is a visual thing. At one
Yes,
point,
wonderful.
I had to think of the how in the world somebody on a flying horse could effectively fight a chimera.
Ooh, show me the chimera straight on because I would love to see that visual. I'll look at it.
Because
All 3 heads.
yes,
Cool.
just really terrifying creature.
Yes.
And my husband walked by the door, and sort of like doing this and doing this. And he's like, what are you
I'm
doing?
just playing with my toys.
I'm world building, honey, because we have to
This
figure
is
out
my job.
this is my job. I get paid to do this. How would somebody on a flying horse really be able to stop and effectively fight something like this? In the original Greek myth, the chimera breathed fire. And one of the first things I figured out is this creature can't breathe fire because something with fire versus something with feathers go so well. So then I decided it had to be poisonous, and that worked out. Then I thought, okay,
Yes.
maybe there's a way
There's
you
still a
slow it
lot of
down.
danger.
You throw
Yeah.
a tri-wire, and that cuts the feathers, the leathery wings. This is more like a pterodactyl.
Yes.
And steals lift from the creature. And then maybe somebody with a bow could be able to fight these guys. But that's an example of world building, which is a ton of fun, but it can take a little bit of time.
That is so cool that you're like putting the thought into it, like holding it and imagining it. Oh, I just love it, Polly. You just did a tremendous job. And I love hearing how. That's so fantastic.
I definitely take that to school visits. The chimera is a big hit on a
Oh, I
school
bet
visit.
all the kids want to hold and see it, right? Afterwards.
I think another thing that authors need to do with books to make them more appealing to kids is make sure that their heroes and heroines are not too perfect.
Oh, yes.
My favorite examples is Susan in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I don't think she has a flaw, and then she
Right.
doesn't get very impacted by leading these battles. Edna definitely has some flaws. But when you're writing, even in fantasy and science fiction, you need to create characters who kids can relate to. So maybe it's to an adult, it looks like a very unreal setup with flying horses and chimerae, but kids aren't going to relate to a story unless there are real kids in the story that have flaws, have insecurities, and
Absolutely.
are kids that they can relate to. So that's also something I think we all need to keep working on is whether it's contemporary, realistic fiction,
Absolutely.
or it's more like what I get to do. You need to write characters that kids can understand and relate to. No perfect kids, because there are no perfect kids.
Yes. All right. Well, Polly, thank you so much. I just love this, and I can't wait to tell more readers about these Skyriders. And it's just exciting. There's got to be another installment coming out, right?
So for sure, the Sky King, that's out now, and this is really the story of I like to say this is the origin story of the Sky.
Yes.
Origin stories are such a big deal in the movie world. So you really find out about the wild sky steeds. Basically, Kai needs to encourage and recruit some sky steeds to come fight for the cause. And that also ends up being kind of a tough thing because she has to deal with a very angry Sky King
Yes.
who does not like human beings for a variety of reasons. And I love this book. Actually, I'm very proud of this book because I think there's some emotional resonance in it.
Yes.
It talks about loss. A lot of fantasy novels, the kids go off and they save the day and people die or creatures die, and there doesn't seem to be any trauma.
Yeah.
So
The
in
resulting, like, what Hunger Games did at the end. I know that's young adult, but at the end that trauma was so real. I like it when we notice the emotional impact things are going to have on an individual after loss. Yes.
and certainly, and people think that realistic contemporary fiction is the only place where you can address that. And I think that is so wrong. I think a good fantasy can be a little plot driven, but I think it's really awesome when you can get a deeper emotional theme going there. So for Kai, she's been bottling up her grief from some of the things that she lost in the first book. And so she really has to deal with that grief in this book.
Yes.
And she also helps the Sky Steeds have really started to be treated as second-class citizens and almost like slaves in some ways. And so they're owned, for example, by humans. And that was never the intent of the original partnership. So she gets to go after that as well. So anyway, this one is out now. It really depends on sales. Publishing is a business. So if the first two books sell well enough, then there would be a third book. I probably have about 9 in my head, a prequel series and a sequel series, but it just depends on sales. So we'll see.
Right. Wonderful. Well, I'm hoping we'll spread the word. We have such important themes in there with such excitement and fun. So, and Polly, you are clearly well read. So can you share with us one of your favorite children's books?
So it is always hard to choose a favorite book, but I thought for today I'd give a shout out to Abby's The Secret School.
Okay, I love Avi. Oh my goodness, I have not read The Secret School. So tell me about it.
This one is not as well known, right? But I think it's one of his finest in a lot of ways. It's a story of an 8th grade sheep herding, a daughter of sheep herders. here
Okay.
in York County, in a very rural, she has a very hard life. She works super hard. But she's determined to go to high school because she wants to become a teacher. And the teacher at the school gets fired, moves away, doesn't get fired, but moves away. And
Right.
the kids all go in on this conspiracy to keep the school open, because they know their parents won't send them if they think that a girl, she decides to teach her peers.
Nice.
That way she will follow up on her lessons. She'll keep learning. And the kids will keep improving their learning, and some of them just don't really want to go back and
Right.
farm today because it's such brutal work. So they all enter into this agreement to run a secret school. But as you can imagine, eighth grade girl trying to teach tough seventh grade boys, she
Right.
has some challenges.
Yeah.
So challenges her, and you see a girl that really wants something and what she will do to get that education, even though, I mean, keeping the school open and hiding that from the parents for part of the time, and then how much the kids actually love school and they want to learn. It's a really beautiful little story. I think he's writing a sequel, or a sequel may have just come out recently.
Oh, oh, wonderful. I was at the library recently and I saw, and now I can't remember what it was called, but there were some books that I was of his that I hadn't heard of and I was so excited because I was like, I haven't read Avi in years. Yes. Oh, wonderful.
He lives here and he's 80 years old, and he's the most strapping, strong looking fella. I see him in the frozen food section occasionally at the grocery store, but
Oh my gosh, are you serious?
yes,
That's
but what happens here is that we have a school who reads this book every year because it's set in Route County where I am, and
uh-huh.
the kids all read it, and then Avi comes and talks to them. It's
Oh,
just fabulous.
fantastic.
However, the last time that he did this, a bear walked down the hillside behind him, and so the kids were so excited. And then they
Oh
saw
my
and so then they got
gosh.
really excited about the bear, but then the bear wandered off, and then they focused on the author again. But
But
that's
still, oh
a
my
little
gosh.
slice of mountain life here, and you have bear stops at your school.
Still, like, what a fantastic memory. It made the moment so impressionable on them. That's so fantastic. Well, Polly, thank you. It's been an absolute joy. I loved it, and I just hoping for more. So we'll spread the word and get people out there reading Skyriders. And
Thank you so much, and I just love what you do to have a whole podcast about books to get teachers and librarians and parents all connecting kids with books.
yes,
We'd have a better world if we have more literate kids out there. So keep up the good
absolutely.
work.
Absolutely. Thank you.